Okay. All right. Well, I guess let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully a few more people will join us. So I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call. Courtney, could you do that for me?
Yes, happy to. First is Kirk Willer Vaughn Jones, and I did hear from Kirk that he's not able to make it today. So Amy Moyer.
Here.
Morning, Amy. John Ring.
Present.
Morning, John. Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally is not with us at this time. Brett Wolk.
Hi.
Brett. Katie McGrath Novak.
Here.
Morning, Katie, and Commissioner Veronica Medina, who also is not with us quite yet. So we do have quorum, which is great. We can keep moving.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. So first order of business, we have 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve. We've got January 26th and February 9th. I would welcome a motion to approve those if anyone wants to do that.
I'll move to approve, Katie.
Thank you. Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, cool. Meeting minutes passed. Thank you. All right, and then we've got a couple of discussion points today, which, I mean, we've got quorum, so it's okay. So one of the things I wanted to do today is talk through our recommendations. I presented these to the full Forest Health Council at our quarterly meeting a few weeks ago. And as an update, I did hear from some folks at the Nature Conservancy, and I also talked a little bit with Christina Bury about the revolving loan program recommendation. So I just wanted to kind of talk through what our next steps for these might look like. So I'm going to, just as a reminder, paste the 3 recommendations in the chat. So, and I'm going to number them. 1, 2, and 3. So I see kind of 2 different paths here, and I am welcoming feedback because I really don't know which way people want to go. So at our full council meeting, we had talked about how it might be useful to have kind of subject matter focused committees moving forward, where, for example, we would have like a task force on just one of these recommendations that could really dive deep into the recommendation and like do it. We don't know if that restructuring is going to happen. If it does happen, we don't know at what point it would happen. So at this point, it is us as a committee continuing to move forward. So a couple of paths that we could go. I think we as a committee could pick one of these and really dive into it, kind of the way that we did with the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. And we can kind of just keep going with our existing things like the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, and the Forest Tracker, and those things that we've kind of been continuing on, and then add one of these. Or I don't know if we want to like create like a task force type of thing, but I'm curious which of these people feel like you really want to prioritize, and how do you all as the committee members want to participate in moving them forward?
I think just to clarify what I heard from you, Katie, if we put one of these recommendations forward, we have to be ready to follow through and like work on it. And it's not something of like, this is a recommendation that the Leveraging Resources Committee would follow up on, not necessarily, it could go to the whole council and there could be a subcommittee otherwise that would take it. But I think what I'm hearing from you is like, we got to back up our talk and like do whatever we say we want to happen?
I don't know. I mean, we
Or
could.
not? Like, is this just good ideas? And we throw it to the council and say, council, we all think that someone on the council should do this.
We could do that, yes. And then it's kind of up to the council and if they
Yeah.
move forward or not. And so,
Just trying to read what your intro was there. Like,
my intro is that I don't know what we should do next with them. And so I'm trying to gauge, like, do we want to really commit to one of these? Do we want to just throw it to the council? Because I just want to see like where we're motivated as a committee. And I want to recognize that Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally has joined us. So welcome.
Thank you all. Sorry, I'm not sure the conversation was. I have been off Zoom all day and with meetings, and then my crown fell out. My 25-year-old crown is, so I tried to get it fixed this morning. It did not work. So my whole day's off now, but I apologize. I'm just, seems like I'm going to be internally 5 to 10 minutes behind all day. So I'm trying.
Everybody has those days. Well, thanks for making it. I hope you feel better with your crown. We're just talking about next steps for our 3 recommendations we've kind of laid out, and where we want to go next with them. One option I see is to like prioritize one of them as the committee, and we could bring in like the TNC folks and kind of create our own little task force, or we could pass it to the council. Yeah, I don't know where it goes next, but I want to make sure that this committee is keeping up momentum, and I want people to be excited when we come in on the second Monday of the month.
Could you remind me of the top? Sorry, I'm just literally Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I did 38 hours of Zooms total, and I'm not exaggerating. So forgive me, I'm a little fried.
You want to hear the recommendations? Is that what you're?
Yeah, just I haven't looked at them, to be honest with you, for over a week, and like I said, my brain is fried. So if you could just remind me so I can kind of get caught up and maybe hear you articulate them.
Yeah, so we've got 3. The first one is identify and remove barriers regarding the unused authorization in the state revolving loan program that allows for financing related to forest health. That one I have heard from a few folks at the Nature Conservancy as well as Christina Burry, and they have kind of already started that moving. And so I think there could be like a task force-esque thing working on that one right now. Number 2 is sustained investment in local wood processing and workforce development. This could include a viable wood stock study. And number 3 is allow or expand the ability for state grants to cover capacity. And this is not just administrative capacity, but lots of different types of capacity. And the Forest Resilience Planning Guide can point to some types of capacity that would align with like the grant programs and possible outcomes. So that kind of aligns with the work that we are currently doing. And John, I saw that you.
Yeah. So I think all 3 are valid for sure. To me, I feel like number 2 is probably the heaviest lift as far as just figuring that piece out. But that's a huge piece of the puzzle in my mind, because if we can get more investment, more industry in Colorado, that drops the price of treatments, which allows us to do more treatments, which blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, number 2 in my mind, I don't know. I mean, 1 and 3, I feel like they're lifts, but I think they're really doable, honestly. And if we had backing, could probably be accomplished fairly quickly. Number 2, I mean, that's, I'm not going to say the holy grail, but I mean, if we could get more industry, I mean, that is huge. And just a little bit of an update, there is some work already being done on the Woodstock study piece. I've attended the legislative committee the last 2 weeks, and there has been some work by private folks on that. One thing that came up was we would have to include federal partners to actually give us the amounts that they're, I don't know if willing is the right word, able to contribute to that, because that's a huge number, or I don't know about a huge number, but it's a huge, it's a, it's a very vital piece of information to know, I guess. So anyways, that's kind of my take. Yeah, if we can get more industry, we can do more work for less, potentially for less. So then that just multiplies. That's my comment.
Thank you. And thanks for connecting that to the legislative committee, because I haven't been able to be on that in a little while. Yeah, I think the workforce stuff, I mean, we've done quite a bit with the workforce stuff in the Forest Health Council generally, both through the different committees and as a full council. That's one that that's an example of where I agree. I think it would be a really heavy lift, and I think it could be really, really meaningful. And so is that like this committee's role, or is it this committee's role to pass that to the council and see who's interested in carrying it further?
I guess I would chime in. I would think with number 2, it would be sort of like the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, where we found some funds and hired a contractor and someone else to like do a study. I think the heavy lift is like, if we actually want to get numbers and compile all that, that's a lot of work, right? And so it's saying like, do we want to make this a priority to make happen somehow? But I don't see anybody, and I'm not doing it, raising my hand either, but no one's raising their hand like, yeah, I'll do that study and lead that, right? But that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. We can't move forward and figure out if there's a way to make it happen.
Yeah, and like I said, I think there's work already that
Yeah.
has been done, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel so much. It's just probably gathering all that information up and then adding a little bit to it. And then my thing is there's 2 pieces: is finding out the numbers, right? And then advertising those numbers to potential investors or companies or whoever that might say, oh, there's an opportunity to do this here or something, so how do we do that as well? So there's kind of find out the numbers, and then how do we, I don't know, advertise is the right word, but you know what I mean? Push those numbers. So
I feel like at least with 1 and 2, and I know there's people working on 3, but yeah, the like Mass Timber Coalition, and sorry, I missed I just see CTIA Executive Director on the screen, but right, there's other people working on this. So what is the council role? Like, how can we either elevate those studies, or, that could be our role rather than doing the actual study.
Right.
And same with the revolving loan program. I don't know. I feel like there's other people that are sort of trying to address that in a very focused way.
Yeah, there are. And so that's where like they've gotten in touch with me and said like, oh, we're compiling all this information, we're figuring out like what are the barriers and such. And so yeah, I don't think our role is necessarily to do everything, but like if we can hear what their work is and help them get it to the legislature or something like that. But I think each of these needs fleshed out more. Like, I don't think just saying, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know much about Woodstock study. Like, is do a viable Woodstock study enough of a recommendation that if we say our role is to try and find funding for that, I was imagining that we would need a lot more detail before even making a request for funding to do this study. But maybe that one's fleshed out and we just need to help them get to it.
Amy, you have thoughts, or I guess share more, but I want to make sure other people share too.
No, yeah, thanks, Brett. There's a lot up in the air, Katie, so I appreciate just leading the conversation. And yes, I'm not the expert on sort of a Woodstock study in particular, but it seems like in all 3 avenues, kind of remembering and figuring out the right lane and role for this committee and the Forest Health Council, is that right word? advisors. We're not equipped to go do the study or do these things. And I think the Forest Resilience Planning Guide was like a really amazing product, but kind of an outlier in sort of the ability of these committees to produce something. So I think it is just figuring out, are we just picking some of these recommendations to develop them a few layers deeper so that they can go to the right, decision makers, whether that's the legislature or the executive branch, for consideration, knowing that yes, they may not get funding or they may not end up being the top priority of XYZ administration. So some of it, I think, is no matter which direction we go, just figuring out what we are trying to do with each of these, because there could be avenues where, we're lending our support to ideas that are being, help or being crafted by a lot of thinkers outside of this committee and the council as well, whether it's folks working on the state revolving fund or working on capacity issues. So those are just verbalizing some of the thoughts in my head.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so I guess looking at these, I mean, how do we do we want to bring in the people who are already working on these and hear what do they need? What role do they want us to play? Should we try and have 3 recommendations going concurrently, or do we want to prioritize one? I was kind of thinking maybe we prioritize one at a time. So if we want to do the Woodstock study first, we can bring in the people, John, that you're talking about who are already working on this and hear what's going on. How can we as this committee make the connections that need to be made or get this to the right audiences, and kind of ask them what our role can be. Yeah, does that make sense as our next step?
I think so. I think that's the role of this committee is, and I think that's where it's evolved. We didn't know what we signed up for when the Forest Health Council first started, but people are really seeing this as a voice to elevate things to the legislature and governor and other agency leadership and people like that, right? And so if we just sort of offer listening sessions, learn what other people are doing, and then we can serve as an elevator / somewhat of a filter. I don't want to, within whatever we filter, whatever we pass on. But yeah, I do think, the Forest Resilience Planning Guide happened. We put extra effort into it because it aligned with a lot of people on this committee's other work, and people are passionate about it and wanted to put extra time into it, right? And so that's how the extra things happen. And when you started, Katie, you're like, how do we get people excited about this committee? I think it is sort of a little bit of that. We need to be responsible for the citizens of Colorado and our job and on the committee, but also what do we want to work on? I could be excited about all these. We haven't talked about 3 very much. So I'll just say, I think the ballot measure that seems to be gaining a lot of momentum. I think that putting time into number 3 and coordinating with the work group, if the ballot measure goes through and it's passed, there's going to have to be a plan on how to put that money to good use, right? And I think this committee could really be a good partner with the people who are involved in all of that, and apply the Forest Resilience Planning Guide and other things to be partners in that and elevate that to agency leadership and legislature and governor of okay, so now you got this ballot measure. I don't know if we really take, right? Other people are doing that, but then how do we help make it successful? So all of these get me excited, but that gets me excited to build on what we're doing.
Yeah, I like that one. Feels like a really direct link to some of the stuff we have done so far. Commissioner, go ahead.
All great conversations, and I want to go back to kind of the charter of what the Leveraging Resources Committee is about. And I don't know if you guys touched on that when you started the conversation. And all these are great ideas and things that we've talked about in legislative committee as well. And when you talk about taking it back to the full council, I think just as legislative committee, we take all things like that. We don't go forward with that, really bring it to the council and getting the whole council on board, right? And I'm wondering though, as you talked about the ballot measure, we talked about TNC's looking at the revolving loan fund. I'm wondering if we spend some time mapping out, I don't know, there was you have some tools like the where you put everything on a page and you put all these notes and then use sticky notes with ideas or things, and then you map it or what we know is happening or not happening, and kind of a SWOT analysis, right? Like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. Or I just feel like maybe we need to take a step back. There's a lot happening and there's a lot of new challenges, and maybe we also need to just take a look at the landscape and see if there's gaps or things that we could pull together. I mean, what is the fire commission doing? What are they advancing? Because sometimes we don't know that, and we didn't know they were doing a workforce development, getting some money and got some grants going out for workforce development through the high schools, and did a 2-day training, especially in my county. I didn't know about that till I saw it on social media. I'm like, well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And they graduated 40 kids over less than a semester. And I just wondering how we get that and how we look across the landscape and connect all the dots. So maybe there's one area of the state that needs more attention, or maybe there's one area that maybe needs, like the Forest Resiliency Planning Guide. How is that outreach going? How's the implementation? How are people receiving it? How many people have looked at it? How many conversations? How many have actually started to use it? Maybe we need to go back and look at those things too, to see how these have helped folks, right? Or not helped folks. Or have you used the forest tracker in your planning? I'm just wondering how we also tell that story and look back and see how it's working and how we could strengthen it or advance it or build upon it, or see if there's one area that maybe needs some extra, the southeast or the southwest of Colorado. I'm not picking on them, I'm not saying they need it, but just some of the rural areas might need I don't know, just need some attention or support. So I'm just thinking, and I'm doing this every day in all these committees, right? And just some other conversations in different areas are the same thing about, we know what we need to do. How do we bring the funding together? How do we help people who have less resources in the community? It's the same kind of conversations, just in different topics. And I've been interested in some of the way we worded questions differently to make people not feel like, oh man, I haven't been doing that, I guess I'm doing something wrong. But in a different way, say, hey, have you used this? How does it help? Or if you haven't used it, would you be interested? And it was just different, kind of a flip on the conversation about the same topics, but it provoked different feedback. And so I'm just wondering how, I'm not sure anything other than the revolving loan fund was kind of a new thing to kind of tackle, but I'm wondering how we maybe just change how we're approaching these or having conversations or engaging people. Just some thoughts, because I literally, seems like every week I'm just wrangling with the same kind of dilemma or question, and I'm sure you all are too, and I'm just wondering how we maybe flip it differently to maybe get at it in a different way, maybe just taking a step back and seeing what we've got done, what's going well, what's not going well, just things like that. Just some thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I think that ties really well into what Brett was saying too. We've done a lot of work to identify that these recommendations are the needs. And so now we can figure out all the dots within those needs and figure out how we as this committee can bring those dots together and push them into the next phase of that work. So I think that gives me a lot of clarity. So I think I can start, we can start behind the scenes identifying all those dots and how we can pull them into the committee and figure out their needs and opportunities for us. Do we want to pick one to start with and kind of, prioritize them in that way?
Can I just stop you right there, Katie, just for a second? I'm sorry, my hand's up, but I'm transitioning to
Yeah,
being
go
in
ahead.
person. But when you talk about finding those dots behind the scenes, I really think we should have everyone be involved with bringing some dots or listening to other dots, so we all kind of get to maybe add to the dots or add dots we're thinking, because we have such a wide range of folks on the council and this committee and other committees. There might be some dots that maybe we all haven't thought of, and I think, I don't know, I just feel like maybe that might be a good discussion, bring folks, maybe charge them with thinking about what the dots are and then bringing ideas. Just a thought.
Yeah, and we could do some of that at the April 9th meeting. Like, hey, what do you guys know of that's going on related to this? And I mean, even in this meeting, like, I know people who are working on the revolving loan fund, and John knows people who are working on the Woodstock study. So yeah, I think we'll definitely want to crowdsource some quote unquote dots. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think this sounds great. I think the idea of one priority for now probably seems more reasonable. And I'm also wanting to tie it in on February 9th, this workshop that Chris Swanson is going to be leading. I think the process that we go through for that workshop will be helpful for this, because I think part of what the question is going to be is, what is the value added that the council can bring? And that's sort of, I think, what you all are kind of circling around for this. Like, maybe we're not going to do this thing, but what's the value that we can add to the collaborative effort that people across the state are taking to make this thing happen? So I'm excited, and I know that's also on the agenda. Oh, yeah, to hear a little bit more about, but hopefully that process that we go through, like a thought process on April 9th, could then be applied to this, process too, or like to this question.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. To answer your question in the chat, Commissioner, this is at the Forest Health Council quarterly meeting, right? Yeah. Yes, so that'll be February, yeah, I think Courtney, you misspoke, but it's April 9th.
Yes, April 9th. Thank you.
Okay, so would it be, I don't know much about this workshop. I'm very excited to get into our next agenda item, which is to hear about that workshop. Would it be more beneficial to hear about the workshop first and then prioritize which of our three we want to dive into first, or do we want to pick our recommendation we want to prioritize first and then hear about the workshop?
What, I guess, so the workshop is the morning of our quarterly meeting, but can you clarify, Courtney, maybe the afternoon of that meeting is where we're supposed to decide on our recommendations as a council? Is that right? Or like, I feel like, what is the goal of the afternoon of that quarterly meeting?
The
When's the
afternoon,
deadline to have a recommendation?
right. The afternoon, oh, I hear what you're saying. The timeline, okay. The Wildfire Matters Interim Committee meets in early summer. So this will be the last council meeting before that. So anything that's going to be presented to the Wildfire Matters Interim Committee needs to be finalized at the April 9th meeting. So that will include recommendations that are made to the legislature. So that could, the legislative committee is working on identifying things to share with the legislature, legislative recommendations that'll be approved. If this committee is wanting one of these recommendations to be shared with the committee, the Wildfire Matters Interim Committee, like, this would be the moment. I think that if you're wanting to make more of like an administrative recommendation or something like that, it doesn't need to go to the interim committee, then it would need to happen on April 9th. So I think it also depends on kind of this question of like, what's the purpose or who's the audience for this?
Thank you. I think that helps. I think if we want to make a recommendation to Wildfire Matters Review Committee, waiting until the morning of the 9th to then decide what we want to do in the
Right.
afternoon of the 9th it's not going to work.
Agreed.
So we should decide today. We talked last time, if I remember, that these are all good ideas, but I don't know that there's like a legislative thing to come out of any one of these three. The only one that like maybe could be a legislative thing would be number 2, to say we recommend doing a study and then pass it off to the legislature and let them figure out how to fund and manage a study. But I don't see, I guess I'm going to put out there, I don't see a legislative recommendation that we would be ready to make today on any of these three. Is that
In the
as far as that timeline? And we can do more administrative recommendations or keep studying all three of these over the next year
Mhm.
with the goal to make a recommendation next year or make action.
I like that idea of like, if one of these is something that this group wants to kind of circle or focus on, that it might take a while, like to come up with a fleshed out legislative recommendation. So yeah, I don't see anything immediately apparent that's a legislative recommendation that would be ready in a month. But I think by exploring further, something might arise. Or it could just simply be kind of, I think, as Amy, you were saying, letting leadership at a different level know that this is a priority and this is a barrier, and that the council is recommending investigation into these issues or into finding these solutions, and like maybe, and these are the people that we would recommend you pulling together, something like that.
I do want to say, I feel like our main job as Jody brought up, our charge is to make recommendations to the legislature and state governor. And if we don't make any recommendations, like that's kind of not doing our job. So I'm saying maybe we're not ready right now, but I want to make sure and open it up if other people think we are and we should. I could definitely get around that. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to kind of pressure ourselves to try and have something fully ready for a prime time sort of legislative recommendation, but it is worthwhile, even in the fiscal climate, to look at, these are things that are worthwhile ideas, because I agree with you, Brett. I think, yes, it's helpful to be realistic about the fiscal climate, but I think this group is also charged with kind of fleshing out the ideas and barriers related to forest health, and then letting the legislature and the governor sort of pick up and move forward what makes the most sense given political and fiscal realities and all of those things. So I think, Courtney, maybe the goal in all of this is just knowing if there's any, I think where we've kind of stuck in the past of our, okay, can this committee even think about a legislative recommendation, or can we even think about an administrative capacity? And I would hope that we can, knowing that, yes, we'll kind of vet it through the Forest Council process. And even if it made it into our annual report or made it as one of the recommendations to the interim committee, that would go through those processes, but I wouldn't want to be limited in the ideas we could consider, knowing that, yes, these are just recommendations. They're not meant to sort of be the official position of DNR or things like that. So maybe just if you can help guide us in sort of staying in the right lane or box within reason, that would be helpful.
Yes. Yeah, I want to keep exploring this too. And I would like for the committees to have full leverage themselves over the tasks that they've been given by statute. I know the piece around fiscal notes is challenging this year. But I don't think that should prohibit the the council from making recommendations, and there can always be a qualifier that, like, we understand this is a tight budget year and we're making this recommendation anyway because we want to like make sure the legislature knows that this continues to be a priority. And for the administrative recommendations, I like that framing too of it's a recommendation, it's not a mandate. That if the agency that it's directed to doesn't have the capacity, then maybe it can be addressed in another way, or maybe it won't be addressed this year. I know that the legislative committee, I think, is going to put together an administrative recommendation that Samantha Albert had come up with, and it addresses OEDIT. And she said, essentially, she would be the person at OEDIT doing the thing, and she's willing to do the thing. And so there was also some collaboration, I guess, between the person who would be doing it and the committee, even though it was the same person, just to confirm seemed reasonable. So I think those kinds of open conversations are helpful. But that can be a part of the process that you just named.
Yeah, I guess, is there, like politically, is there, I don't know what the word is, annoyance, I guess, when the legislature like receives, if we were to recommend something with a fiscal note, does it reflect poorly on us, I guess, if we recommend something knowing that it's a tight budget year and knowing that they might not be able to pick it up with the fiscal note? Like, does that reflect badly on the council, or are we free to kind of just say like, this is what is needed, and so this is what we're recommending, and, you know, do with it what you will?
I've heard that it comes off a little obtuse or like unattuned to the situation, but I've also heard people, like I know Commissioner Waters is like, we got it full steam ahead anyway, and make a point. And so I think there's differing perspectives. I think within the department doesn't want to put forward budget requests, having been directly told that it's not the appropriate time. And I think one thing that the council is teasing apart is how much is it DNR and how much is it separate from DNR.
Right. Okay.
So I think there's that line that we're constantly trying to uncover.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I feel like Amy probably has good perspectives having worked at DNR also.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sure Commissioner Shattuck McNally has perspective too. I think it really just depends on the realism of what is actually going to move forward. You know, if we are only going to choose 5 ideas that we would like to have a chance to move forward, I think it would not be in the best benefit to put 5 things that have an enormous fiscal note at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it should limit putting it maybe in our annual report or in other avenues,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when there is funding available, or, you know, we can't lose sight of this idea. I think it would not be in the council's best interest to say, we're not going to bring up any idea that would require funding. I think it just depends what venue you bring it up. You know, maybe don't put forward all 5 of your ideas that are absolutely dead in the water because of funding. But don't, you know, I don't think it would be in the council's best benefit to just say, we're not going to put them in any sort of publication that the council might provide as an avenue between these different venues, is my thought.
Okay, that's helpful framing. Yeah. So we can still say like the need is this, even if that's not one of our 5 legislative recommendations. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Couple things if I might. So are you saying you're coming up with 5 and then bringing it to the council, or is it going to the legislative? I'm trying to figure out if both committees are bringing 5.
No, so at this point, I don't think that we will have any legislative for April 9th. I think we're talking like in the future, as we go through each of these priorities that we've set, maybe a legislative recommendation will arise. And in that case, like maybe for next year or for our annual report or whatever, we will likely have something there, but not for April 9th. You guys.
Yeah.
Guys
Well,
have
I
your
think
things.
it'd be nice to have a conversation when you guys come up with an idea, how do you bring it to the legislative committee to have a full, discussion in case I hate for us to see where we all bring because we try to bring 5 and then you guys bring 2 or 3 and then it brings You know what I'm saying? I wonder how that looks and how can we develop something to be collaborative and partner if we have a joint meeting next year. I think that would be really powerful, actually. And how do we work together on some of those things so that we're not duplicating efforts either? And so I wanted to bring that up. The point I was going to make before I heard about the legislative thing, and I wanted to clarify that, is Amy kind of said this as well. We talked about this beginning of, I think, both this year and last year, is there's a cost of doing nothing. And we need to, state that. And we also need to state, I keep saying in the legislative committee, we still have to bring these ideas forward, even if they're going to cost something, because maybe we have to, if we don't bring the needs forward, then they'll think everything is okay, right? Everyone thinks, oh, they haven't been talking about this. We have to keep talking about the need and what needs to be done. And we know we also need to recognize that we have to identify a new source of funding, right? And how does that work? And I think by stating those, that, like you said, you guys talked about having a study. Well, it talked about the study, and this is needed, but you're not sure how should pay for it. Maybe, you see a lot more legislation talking about donations or gifts or donations for this thing that passes that you want to do. And then you see if other partners and sectors step up to help braid and blend funding. And on top of that, I think, we have to just state that, the costs of the benefits, if we invest in this will do this in the long run. And if we can't do this, but we need to look at finding a way to do this, right? There's just lots of those things we still need to talk about. And maybe we do it in the conversation as a full council, that even though we do the legislative recommendations, we would state that we understand of the fiscal constraints, but here are some things that we still think are needs, and we know they're going to cost. But from these needs, we found some low-hanging fruit, and here are some ideas that come from this, but we still have to address these in the long run and solve these challenges. And I think stating that, whether it's in the annual report, even into the recommendations to the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, we still have to state that in the narrative. And I think telling the story over and over and over and over again has its benefits, because we're going to have to keep this in front of legislators, industry, administration, everyone, because there's so many needs and priorities, and the ones that stay in front or squeaky wheels are going to get some attention. And we have to make sure our needs and our challenges and the urgent priorities that, I'm not saying this is the best or the most important priority, but it's certainly one of, there's so many in the human services, and there's so much happening that I think we need to address that. They're all needs. These are priorities, but there's a cost. There is a cost, and not taking the cost avoidance. There is a cost if we don't address these things now. So just thanks for letting me get on my soapbox for a minute, because this is the same conversation I'm having every week. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is answering my question, because I wasn't sure how to toe that line. So thank you. And yes, I definitely want to have some sort of either a joint committee meeting, or maybe just you and I meet, Commissioner, or something, to talk about how the two committees can move forward, and make sure that we're getting our recommendations aligned and everything for next year. Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on something Jody said, which was, I think everyone's kind of saying this, but also when we go to Wildfire Matters, we can say more than just here are our legislative recommendations. And I think it would be helpful to be actually telling more of a narrative, more of a story. What are the challenges? What are we bumping into? Even if it's not a legislative recommendation, what are we finding the priorities are? Because this is essentially, I know they get lots of presentations, but this is our chance to say these are what the priorities are, even if we don't have a legislative recommendation for it. So I think this year there'll be more coordination in preparation for that meeting, because it won't just be these are the lead recommendations. I think it could be great even have you there, Katie, and say, like, this is what we're uncovering as the priorities and challenges, and we don't have a solution for this yet, but we want to keep it at the top of the list and be the squeaky wheel for this issue and talk about the cost of doing nothing. So I'm glad Jill said that, and it's reminding me that at that presentation this year, I want to have a broader perspective
Awesome. That's really very helpful. Thank you. Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I do still want to hear from Brett on the workshop planning, but really quick, I think we should prioritize like which one of these we want to tackle first, and we'll tell the council like these are our 3 things, but maybe just for our knowledge as the committee, like which of these do we want to go for first? It sounds like John was really interested in number 2. I don't know. I've heard all 3 of them floating around. So I don't know. Do we want to do like a vote? We could maybe each put a number in the chat, the one that you're most interested in going for first, and then we'll just know that we'll get to the other 2 throughout the year.
I think I'm okay to vote. I think if we're not making a recommend, I think I want to go back to the timeline.
Mhm.
And maybe we can figure this out after April 9th. Or do we need to, if we want to vote now, but it seems like
Sorry, I guess my understanding was we probably won't be putting any of these as a legislative recommendation. And so for that purpose, we don't need to have anything by April 9th. And then like when we can make stuff for the annual report or just kind of on an ongoing basis, we can work through these. But I don't think am I following right, Courtney? The thing we need to have finalized is the 5 for April 9th, right? And the 5 legislative recommendations are what the legislative committee is going to do. And then our committee can still provide some of that context at the for the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, but we're not necessarily providing a recommendation.
This feels very nuanced. If anything that's gonna be shared as a council priority would need full council approval. I don't know the nuance between showing up at the interim committee and saying, this is what our committee is focused on. I think it's helpful to be able to speak for the council as a whole to say like, this is, and I think the 30-year vision will be something we talk a lot about at the Wildfire Matters committee meeting. Like, these are the themes, like these are some of the key goals that we've identified. Like, I want to go deeper into the landscape of the work that the council is doing, but I also think it'll be helpful if the full council approves it. So I don't have a clear answer for you. I think to be safe, it would be great to have the full council approve. It might be appropriate to say, hey, I'm this Katie McGrath Novak, chair of the Leveraging Resources Committee. This is what we're focused on. This is the first time it's really coming up that way. So we don't have precedent to work on.
I see. I guess my vision was we could share like, this is what we've been doing. These are the needs that we've identified. We don't have recommendations right now. But then as far as us choosing a priority 1 to work on, that was more for my planning of like, which dots do we want to pull together first? Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, not to kind of overly complicate the discussion, but I think if we did want the council to approve something that we would share with the interim committee, not as legislative recommendations and not part of our 5, I think this committee would be I think we could pull together some sort of 1-pager that the council could review of like what we've been looking at over the last year. And here's some of we can even make these ideas a little more high level. Like maybe we don't go into the state revolving fund, but we say, exploring loan or bridge funding opportunities, something that high level that the council could respond to. Courtney, if you think that would be helpful by April 9th. I wanted to throw out, that seems realistic as opposed to the next level of 3 very concrete legislative recommendations, which I think we're not there. So that doesn't answer at all, Katie, your question on prioritizing the 3. But I just wanted to see if we could get on the same page of, are we going to try and pull together a high level brief that the council would respond to?
No, I think that is helpful because I think we're like kind of talking two different tracks here. There's like what we want to share with the council and get approved, which then we could tell the Wildfire Matters Review Committee about. And then there's what's our next steps as the committee, which would require some prioritization and me pulling in some extra people. So that's, yeah, I think there's two different paths going. And I would be happy to work on that. And we can all kind of pass it around via email, like what our committee's been working on. And then we would have kind of approved talking points. Courtney, is that would be helpful?
That makes, yes.
Okay. Cool. Does that make sense, everyone? I know it's been a bit back and forth. Thanks, Jody. Good to see you. Okay. Courtney, do we have another Leveraging Resources Committee meeting before April 9th?
No, we do
No.
not have one on the calendar before April 9th.
Okay, well I actually think that's good. What if we put together a little brief with what we're working on? Oh, sorry, I'm just reading the chat. We have some highlighted. Yes, so we can put together a brief, present that at the full council meeting, and then hopefully get everyone's approval on that and get some clarity on like what we'll share with the Wildfire Matters Review Committee. And then we as a team can pick like which one to move forward with. And maybe we could even get some Forest Health Council feedback on that. And then we could get more people that maybe want to get involved. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, that sounds great to me, Katie. I was just going to say, maybe if we don't want to lose sight on this committee structure, untangling of, how do the committees interact, and we'll need more expertise, I think, from either the full council or other folks to really dive into some of these recommendations. Whether at some point we consider the Forest Health Council has one kind of steering committee that I think builds from the legislative committees, given the magnitude of participation that's already on that committee, with some of these ad hoc committees that are working on specific recommendations. So I just think there is an elegant opportunity for some of that shift to both get feedback from the Forest Health Council on some of those 3 priority areas that we've identified. And then Courtney, to the extent we still talk about the committee structure, I still think there's kind of an elegant handoff here, to the extent that there's an overlapping priority between committees and interest from the full council to kind of join some of these ad hoc issue specific conversations.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I'll just second that, Amy. I really think it's timely and needed to talk about the committee structure. And I think this call was sort of representative of that, of sort of the confusion of who's doing what and how it works. And yeah, I'd really like, I don't know what the rest of the agenda is for that meeting, but I think sooner than later, I think there's an opportunity and a need to do that. So thanks, Amy, for bringing that up.
Awesome. Brett, do you want to rapid fire tell us about the workshop and how it fits into what we've been talking about today?
Courtney was doing great describing it earlier. Yeah, a little bummed that Commissioner Shattuck McNally dropped off because we're hosting it in Fort Collins in your home. So it's mostly myself and Eric Toman, who's on the council, have sort of offered to be the local hosts and organize the next meeting, or help the DNR organize the next meeting. The sort of first afternoon, usually we do a field trip or some kind of learning activity, and we're thinking of focusing around workforce development. And Eric Toman at CSU has made connections with Front Range Community College, and that's something that the council supported funding actually going to both 4-year and 2-year universities. That's one piece of legislation we've passed. So having opportunity for the council to visit the community college, meet with the faculty and staff there. Maybe we're trying to see if we can meet with actual class of students doing forestry, they have the forestry simulator there, so like hoping to get on and simulate and do some stuff, but some exciting things, but then also just actually hear how the legislation got implemented and what needs are and how to work that around. Bringing in potentially like state Forest Service internship programs, our internship program at CFRI. That's sort of where it's starting. It could grow even bigger, but that's the idea for the Wednesday afternoon. And then Thursday, there's been a legislative or administrative recommendation for a couple of years to learn about vapor pressure deficit and climate adaptation strategies. And that originated from a talk Chris Swanson gave at a Colorado Wildfire Conference meeting a couple of years ago. So we haven't been able to really address that as a council. And so I contacted Chris and said, do you want to come out and explain this again and help us develop policy off of this? And he said that would be great. So Chris Swanson is coming out and with a focus on helping the council learn about climate adaptation strategies, how climate adaptation moves from sort of ideas to, action. And Courtney, you said it really well. I don't have my notes in front of me, but helping the council sort of see what the needs are and where we want to engage. And a thought I've had is using the Forest Resilience Planning Guide as, rather than sitting down and saying, council, here's climate adaptation, what are all the things you would want to do? Sort of focusing the council a little bit within the structure of the Resilience Planning Guide and saying, here's 15 actions or 4 stages of readiness. Within these, how would we want to move climate policy forward, and where do we think the needs are and the capacities and things like that? So that's from 9 to 12 in the morning. There'll be 20 minutes or so of intros and getting together, and then roughly 2.5 hours where we're working with Chris to design. He'll give a presentation probably on sort of climate adaptation strategies, remind people what vapor pressure deficit is and some of those things. And then we'll actually get a kind of workshop, break people into small groups or do some kind of activities to have people learn how to sort of integrate climate adaptation into policy. How's that, Courtney?
Great summary. And I know there's more to sort, and I know I have action items related to it. So excited to see it continue to come together.
So that wasn't quite rapid enough. It's 1 o'clock, but that's kind of where we're going.
Rapid. That was exactly a good way to wrap us up.
And I also have printed, oh, my thing is blurry.
Yeah, Chaska.
This is a printed copy of the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. We got a couple hundred of them printed to pass out for things like this workshop. There's a thing we're doing with the Center for Climate Conservation, CSU Extension, State Forest Service next week. We can hand them out there. So if anyone wants them, I'll bring them definitely to April, but if you need them sooner, happy to share.
That sounds great. And I still have some 4-pagers from months ago. Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was just going to say maybe last plug, because I know we have to wrap up, is on the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, Brett, I think there's a good avenue to try and pair with some of the webinar series that the work group is putting out on funding strategies, especially in the later ones. And so I've mentioned that to Julie Shapiro. So maybe just a flag for you to keep an eye out. And at some point in that webinar series, and I think it works well in some of the later sessions, a plug would be a missed opportunity for all. So I'm trying to keep my eye on that as well.
Thank you. I saw that and had the same thought of this is screaming for that collaboration and coordination. And yeah, I like how work is a standing meeting agenda here, but how can, we get on there. And also I'm glad, I never really heard, but I think that's Megan, the CTIA director. I'm glad you were able to hear a little bit. I don't know how much you've been in the loop on this workforce development and showing off the simulator and that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for sticking around for 2 extra minutes. I appreciate your time. We'll be in touch via email with some sort of 1-pager or something for the council. So motion to adjourn. Do I need a motion to adjourn?
Thank you for leading us today, Katie, and I motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Brett. Second?
Second and approved.
All right, great. Motion carries. I don't even know if I do that half the time, but we'll do it today. Okay, have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Katie.